Service is a law enforcement agency. We were established in 1789 and was one of the first judiciary acts. President George Washington appointed the first 13 U.S. Marshals. And ironically, Kentucky was one of those first appointments, and that Marshal was Samuel McDowell. And I think McDowell County is named after that. So we've been around for 235 years. That's 81 years before we had a Secret Service, 124 years before we had an FBI, 188 years before the ATF, 189 years before a DEA. So in the beginning of our country's history, it was just the United States Marshals out there in the Old West, progressing along with the history of the United States. One of my proudest time segments of our agency's history is the civil rights legislation that was passed in the 1960s. You know, Congress and judges can pass laws, but it's men and women that are actually boots on the ground that have to enforce those laws. In the 1960s, it was Deputy U.S. Marshals that escorted Ruby Bridges and James Meredith began to integrate the schools in the town. A lot of those men and women were assaulted. And fast forward to today, it's men and women of law enforcement that are the boots on the ground that try to keep that rule of law intact. The United States Marshal Service falls under the executive branch. We have 3 branches of government. The unique thing about the United States Marshal Service is we answer to the president, but we support the judiciary. And then on the other side with Congress, we have to enforce its laws. So we hold a unique place in our government, having to support all 3 branches of government. The way we're organized, there are 94 judicial districts. Western Kentucky is one of those districts. And we only have about 3,500 deputy marshals. But collectively, we are responsible for more arrests than all the other federal agencies combined.
How's that so? That doesn't make.
We're sort of like the Marine Corps of the DOD. We have less resources, but we just do the mission every day. Thank you. So in the Western District of Kentucky, I'm responsible. Between here, it's almost a line that goes down from Oldham County straight down. Have offices in Paducah, Owensboro, Bowling Green, and then Louisville is our main office. We do judicial security. We do fugitive investigations, witness security, our sex offender investigations program, where we go out and we take the sex offender registry and we make sure that people that are required to be registered by law are living where they're supposed to be living and they're working where they're supposed to be working. A lot of times we'll go out and do an enforcement action and find out these people aren't where they're supposed to be living and may even be living in a home with small children, and the person living with them does not have any idea that sex offenders living with them. So that's one of our important, along with that mission, we also do child recovery mission across the United States. And we also are responsible for the pretrial confinement of defendants as they go through the federal process. Our 2023 statistics, last year we arrested more than 73,000 fugitives. 28,000 of those were on federal charges and 45 were state and local arrest warrants. We have a fugitive task force in Louisville. We have members on LMPD, the sheriff's office, state probation and parole. We used to have a trooper about 3 years ago, and we haven't had one since, and KSP keeps on saying one's coming. So we hope to get the state police back involved with our fugitive task force. A lot of people don't realize that we have a contract with the Oldham County Detention Center. And the interesting thing about that is years ago when I came back as the chief, I sat down with Mike Simpson and we sort of had a Field of Dreams conversation. Like, if he builds this detention facility, what could he look at with the contracts that we could put into place for them to house our inmates. I couldn't make a commitment, but I said, hey, we have a trust and a relationship. And I said, it sells itself. You're close to Louisville. We don't like using Metro Corrections. And so now we've gotten to the point where, as part of that relationship that's built over the years, these numbers are a little bit dated, but I think you're almost at a neutral position where the detention facility for Oldham County doesn't cost Oldham County taxpayers anything. And actually, you might be on a surplus side of it where at some point you could return to the general fund. But a lot of people don't realize that. And Jessica and Jeff and Mike, great operation they run there. It's been a model for other facilities around the state, and they reach out to them as subject matter experts. I told Grant I would do one case profile. In 2004, I was selected as a team of criminal investigators to travel to Baghdad, Iraq. This is just before that. This is during the conflict and before the nation was returned back. It was in a status of the Coalition Provisional Authority. Our task was to prepare the cases for the regime on charges of war crimes. I can tell you some of the top investigators from around the country were assembled, and we were in a lot smaller room than this. And they had the main liaison crimes investigator, which was a U.S. attorney out of Florida, had a stack of folders. And the first one he pulls was Saddam Hussein's. And so who wants this one? And in reality, everybody started looking around. I definitely looked around because I didn't want that one. And so that was assigned to two of the investigators. And the next one he came to was the number 2 most wanted, and that was Chemical Ali. And he looks right at me and he goes, Parrish, you got this one. And I had to catch myself in a moment because I'm like, I went to Oldham County High School and actually JCC for 2 years before I went to U of L. And I'm like, this is a massive undertaking. And so I just, there's a saying on how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. So I took that, I processed that. That's where most of the most horrific crimes were committed against the Kurdish people in the northern region. So I had to plan an operation where we would commingle with the military to get us up there to the Kurdish region, which is northern Iraq. Saddam Hussein had tried to, through genocide, eliminate that ethnic group. And Chemical Ali was his henchman, which they deployed chemical munitions on that area. And actually, I was tasked with going up there, collecting witnesses, witness statements, evidence, assembling this into a prosecution report, and then coming back down to Baghdad and presenting that to the Iraqi Special Tribunal. In return, they returned a indictment of him. He went through his trial and was eventually hung as a result of the guilty verdict. And like I said earlier, in 1988, Chemical Ali was responsible for the extermination of 5,000 people. A lot of those were women and children. So tough situation. That's an ethnic group. They still are up there. They don't really have their own country. They sort of are in Turkey and northern Iraq. And it's still a bad situation for those people. That's part of the team that I was assembled with. The unique thing about that is there were different factions of the Kurds. They were called the Peshmerga, which were basically the freedom fighters of that northern Iraq area. So I had to travel, and I know you're going to be shocked by this. I sort of stand out in a Middle Eastern country in an area. So I was sort of a target. So we had to travel with a protection detail.
And are there some faces black? Yeah.
Yeah, some of those people, you can't show their identities. And that's pictures of my protection detail from the different cities I had to travel in.
You're not exactly dressed like to look like him,
Yeah, it was a challenge.
So, when you look back on it, did you like the work? I know it's grisly, so why might it be the right?
It was something
right
that
word?
needed to be done.
Okay,
Those people needed justice. And, so, yeah, it's, you know, it's just something that you don't know where you're gonna be at in life, and I was just at that place in life, and that mission came to me.
Yeah.
This last slide, you know, we don't give enough credit to the people left back at home when we have to deploy and go and do these types of missions. And we had 2 young girls at the time. And actually, I think my daughters were probably partially raised in the back of the State Farm Agency on the Grange. Rena was still working. I was gone overseas a lot after 9/11. And one of the things to help the girls, they made little dolls of themselves. So I told Rena, I said I would travel around the country, and I would take pictures, and then I would send them back so they could feel like they were part of that. And actually, the CNN reporter wanted to do an interview with me. I said, well, before I do the interview, you've got to take pictures with Sarah and Ellie so I can send back to Rena. The Peshmerga did not like posing with the dolls, but they, you know, I had to. And that's it. And I'm open for any questions you guys may have.
You all don't wear any type of uniform, I mean, other than a suit or
Well,
whatever.
it depends. We have such a diversified mission. You know, we do protection details. We're usually in suit and tie. Our tactical teams, you know, it depends on if we're operating in a urban environment or a rural environment. We do manhunts where we're in camo. So it just really depends on what we're doing at the
But
time.
it's not like a police officer or something that wears a uniform every day.
We have a uniform, but it doesn't look like, you know, we don't wear a tool belt and cartridge to the street. And a lot of times in our fugitive investigations, we're in street clothes.
And then on the airlines, you're pretty much dressed. in
Well, I'm glad you made that
fashion.
point. We have nothing to do with the Air Marshal program. They stole our name.
Okay.
That's with the Department of Transportation. We are with the Department of Justice. So we have nothing to do with the Air Marshal program. But everybody asks, are you guys on planes? I'm like, no, they stole our name. So,
Interesting.
yes, sir.
You had a statistic of 200 something arrests every day. Is that for the country or for what?
That's for the country, and we had a significant arrest yesterday. I don't know if you caught it on the media or not, but Jamarcus Glover, which was earlier involved with the Breonna Taylor investigation, and then he got out, continued in drug trafficking, was inadvertently released on a low bond. We took on the case, and we arrested him yesterday. Shockingly enough, more fentanyl, more Suboxone, more guns. So we took another drug dealer that I think on his last set of charges, you know, a 13-year-old girl died from fentanyl poisoning from what he was doing. So that was a big arrest yesterday for us.
do you have a favorite story or two, if you want, that kind of, when you think back on your career, these are the stories that bring a smile to your face, make you feel really good about what you've accomplished over the years?
Probably my most memorable is we responded to Hurricane Katrina. It was a chaotic situation. We were trying to rescue people, and then at one point they would not take people with pets, and some people would not leave their houses. And then at some point they just evacuated everybody. So what me and my team would do unofficially is we would just go out into the 5th Ward, turn off the engines on the vehicles and listen. And in these houses, people had left their pets. And so we would go and breach these doors. There was a Winn-Dixie outside of downtown New Orleans that had been abandoned. Veterinarians from all around the country showed up and said, how can we help? And they just sort of just set up these makeshift vet facilities in this parking lot. And one of them came to me and said, there's dog food and supplies in there that we could really use. Can we go in there and get that stuff? And I'm like, I can't tell you You can go in there to that, you know, Winn-Dixie, but I'm not gonna stop you. So we probably rescued about 60 or 70 dogs and cats. And so that's, you know, when you do this job long enough, you see the dark side of things, but rescuing those animals really made me feel good. And so I would say that's probably my best assignment.
Without getting into the politics of the situation, you were there with Kim Ali in 1988, when she saw what.
I was there in 2004. The atrocities happened around the 88 time frame.
Was there additional? We were told that because of the going in was basically because of Saddam's mass wedding. Was there additional other than that?
I'm sort of a hog in the machine. There were chemical munitions that the regime used on the Kurdish people. I don't know before the initiation of the war if they were in place or not. That wasn't really our mandate. It was just to investigate the genocide of the Kurdish people.
The reporter had another, and it seemed like that there was a great divide over what was actually true. I just like, as a citizen, I just like to care if I'm right or if I'm wrong. I just like to know the truth.
Yeah, that's above my maintenance level.
I find criminals can be really digital and really small. Yep. The smartest one you ever actually caught, and nobody knows it. And then what's the stupidest thing you ever seen somebody do?
You're asking me like over a 20 year career, human beings are creatures of habit. And, now that I'm sort of away a little bit from the younger criminal investigators, I tell people patience. People go back, catching Glover. He's a drug dealer. He works in a certain area. He's going to come back to that area. We can track phones and devices and stuff, and they'll be out of town for a while, but people return to what they know. And, also when, we're on a fugitive mission, you can drop your phones, but you're still going to talk to the same people because we're all creatures of habit, and we want to work in an environment that's familiar to us. So I guess, as far as the intelligence level, it's hard to weigh in on that. I just know it's, if you want to be successful, you have to study human nature.
There's a lot of times, Brian, the people that you bring to us have said that they want money fast. They can do the 5-10 years that not the marshals, but our federal government would give them. But while they're outside of jail, they want money fast, so they can drive the nice cars, and it's what they decide. I was talking with my wife last night, and we both said if we went to jail, it would hurt all of us and hurt our families. It would be hard. There's the people that the U.S. Marshals are dealing with are smart, and they don't care. So most of them don't care.
Well, I think now I can say that, you used to get a certain amount of compliance from citizens when you would try to take an enforcement action. That's changed. There's less of a respect for law enforcement. Now people want to portray themselves as victims when they're wrong and become aggressive. It's a difficult situation, but, Lyndon Johnson had a saying he didn't want to bomb, Hanoi from Washington, D.C. So I can't really, restrict people on what they do when they encounter something on the street. But I can say to the guys that vehicle pursuits, anything involving vehicles, I've tried to take off the table because now there is no, hey, the blue lights are behind me, I'm gonna go ahead and pull over and be compliant. It's they don't care about anyone else. They're going to run and put innocent people at risk. So we've pretty much taken vehicles off the table just because if you see a rabbit out in the field and you know where the hole is, at some point the rabbit's going to go back to the hole. So patience is a key now to being successful in hunting some of these violent fugitives, because you want to minimize the risk to the community.
Isn't that what you've really seen is that it's not so much you all, it's really an element of that criminal element. It has less respect for what's going around.
Well, I mean, you guys are in the community every day. Do you sense a less of respect for, I mean, common courtesy is not that common anymore. And, you know, when you encounter someone that's a good person and they're courteous, you're like, this is weird, you know, and it shouldn't be like that. So, you know, like I said, when I started off, I want to thank you guys for what you do every day. You're trying to improve the quality of our community. This has been like a homecoming. I remember bleeding up on Bell Field from the time I played flag football to the time I graduated. So I just want to thank you all for the opportunity for me coming in. I told Steve a long time ago, I said, I'll get here. So promises made, promises kept. And Steve's always been a role model and a mentor, and I know his club's meant a lot to him over the years. I want to thank you all for supporting Steve and some of these old guys like Bill and Mike and stuff and tolerate them. I've got to get back at Bill for being so hard on me when I was working over on Herman's farm. So, any other questions?
How does one become a marshal if you're ex-military? I mean, it's a training program. People by and large come from other law enforcement agencies.
We're pretty diverse. You know, not everybody's a veteran. Some people have prior law enforcement. I had prior law enforcement. And I was a veteran in a college degree, but it's not exclusively that path. So we have some programs, you know, college intern programs. We do, you know, because of veterans' preference in hiring with the federal government, we do give a nod to the veterans. But, you know, you have to be on by age 37. I mean, I'm sorry, 37, and we have mandatory retirement at 57. So we do try to get those previous law enforcement officers too, because they can make an immediate impact.
Brian, what's your youngest? Where do you start off? 21 or not?
Well, yeah, we've had some people come on around 22, you know, that were in a college intern program. I'd say the average is probably mid-20s to close to 30.
How many people in the Western District here that?
I only have about 16 deputies.
Oh.
And so we have a pretty big mission. You know, I've got 2 deputies in each sub-office location. But our strength is it being a nationwide law enforcement agency. So when we want to send out a collateral lead, when we do our investigation, we determine they're in Atlanta, we send that lead out, and then those marshals in that area with the rest of the task force go to that location. So if the KSP wanted to give us a trooper, basically they have an asset of being able to immediately say, hey, we think he's in Seattle, Washington, and we'll put people out there that day.
Were you involved at all with the bust at one of our local hotels last month for drugs?
No.
No. Okay.
The Glover fellow, was he arrested under federal or was he?
That was one of our, so that was a state warrant, but we have a violent crimes task force. So under our mandate, we can adopt violent offender state and local warrants.
My point was that the state judge let him out.
Yes.
And now that he's been arrested by federal, is he under a federal judge?
No, he's lodged under the state charges. Now, the U.S. Attorney's Office can review that case and see if they want to bring that up to the federal level.
So when you're looking for folks how does the US Marshal pay, do in comparison to the state troopers that you're talking?
You know, we all do different jobs. I will say this, state troopers are severely under, paid. And that's why KSP, and I'm sure it's been a challenge for the captain. That is the, factory for some of the best law enforcement officers to go to the other agencies. It used to be if you started off in Pikeville, as soon as you got your chance, you tried to get to J-Town where they pay the most. And, outstanding law enforcement organization, severely underpaid.
So you're not,
But just like the sheriff's office and the county police, and I think one of the worst things, this is my personal opinion, and a lot of people don't realize this, we've removed pensions from law enforcement retirement. So what you have now, you want the best officers, but you don't want to give them a pension. You can get an individual to do a very difficult task for 20 years if they know at the end of that 20 years, there's something there for them. What a lot of the counties and cities have done is remove pensions. So now someone does 5 years, they're like, this is really tough and taking a toll on my family. I could be sued civilly. I could lose everything. I think I'll just go to Amazon now. And we're losing our quality officers. I see it. The other people in law enforcement see it. So if we could do anything to support law enforcement, it would be bring back pensions for people. Not, and just full disclosure, it's a situation where you bring an officer on and you say, we'll help you do a 401k and you work as long as you need to work. How long is that person really going to risk their life? And now their civil liberties, the way some of these court cases go.
and that's what KSB had.
So you also have a pension?
Yeah, I'm tier 1, so I have a 20-year retirement. I've been doing this 30 years. I've been just to jump in here. Yes, I've been all over the place. Desi commander for several years. We have Kentucky State Police has an outstanding working relationship with the Marshal. Their resources, they mirror and exceed ours, and we use it in criminal investigation. We're constantly working. At post 5, our detectives have special service tracking. But you're exactly right. Law enforcement as a whole, our new troopers are hired in the 401k. They don't have a pension. The average, don't quote me on this, but I'm close. The average life expectancy of law enforcement officers is quoted at about 58, 59 years old. So I can go in a minute. My wife made sure she's taken care of, but you know, it is an issue across the nation. But Oldham County, and you've heard me think, the papers and press and stuff has been helpful in recruiting efforts and stuff, and we are all working together.
You know, one other thing, Brian, is officers hired in today, they don't have that 20 an hour. They have to go 25 now. It's more now. Okay, it's 25. Nobody. Without that mention, that's one of the most important things.
On the federal side, we still have a 20-year retirement. That's why we get to cherry pick from the local agencies now.
Brian, a little bit of history. Our very first U.S. Marshal contract was 1997. The same year that I hired this gentleman right here, he came in March of 97. That was our very first contract. And then we migrated to immigration. ICE was our second contract. And then after we moved into our brand new facility in 2018, 2019, we signed a contract with the state of Indiana, which was our third U.S. federal contract. And so we still have a group that goes up to Indianapolis, transports federal inmates back to our facility from the state of Indiana. So that is really good. And Brian has called me a couple of times. He shared with some ideas and concepts on what we're working on right now. Because the last time that we set a per diem rate was 2017. We have not increased our federal contract since 2017, and we're now doing that. These people right here are doing that, not myself anymore, but they're doing it, and we hope to get at least a $10 increase, and that's gonna shoot us through the roof.
Before we run out of time, Brian, I want to thank you. Everything you've done in your career, has been, you have been in harm's way. And I want to thank you and your family because it takes the whole family to support a person who commits themselves to a career such as yours.
He was one heck of a softball player.
So, he is.
No, we played softball against one another. We had a team, we were called the chain gang, and we played
The Badgers. We were the Badgers.
Young Badgers.
Yeah.
And we played down there, played against one another.
Brian, we are so glad that you were able to join us today. Thank you very much. A little token of our appreciation is the Rotary symbol with the four-way test on the back. This is a gift to you to remind you of this day when you were finally able to join us and complete a father-in-law's desire, which interestingly enough, I had no idea there was any connection here. I tracked you down from a completely different direction, and I was so surprised when he said, "Oh yeah, I'll do that right away." Yeah. And we also will make a donation in your name to end polio in the world, to Polio Plus. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Would you like to draw for it?
Sure, I'll go.
You didn't buy.
I didn't mind either.
That's all right.
Oh.